the systematic blueprints for government consolidation, specifically referencing Project 2025. This document outlines a really extensive overhaul designed to achieve bureaucratic compliance through a rapid, top-down executive takeover.
And we are juxtaposing that blueprint, a blueprint for, administrative capture, against some sophisticated counter strategies. These are derived from cybernetics and cognitive science, what some have called the anti-2025 blueprint.
Right. So the central strategic question we really need to answer is this. To effectively counteract this kind of radical consolidation of power, must resistance focus primarily on, say, external, low-variety systemic disruption, like simple acts of sabotage and creating administrative drag, or is the essential priority more internal, high-variety, cognitive and cybernetic reframing, really getting at the root ideological fracture?
I guess I come at it from a different way. I argue that the battle has to be won in the mind first. Look, external action is necessary, I grant that. But internal, cognitive reframing, well, that's the foundational requirement. It's what's needed to break the shared delusion, the folie à deux, that allows a systemic threat of this magnitude to kind of flourish at scale.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective here. My position is that the immediate operational threat requires an immediate operational response. Project 2025 is not some theoretical white paper. It's, like I said, it's a personnel manual. It demands immediate systemic obstruction, not just, intellectual critique.
Okay, detail that operational threat for me then. What makes the immediate response so critical in your view?
Well, the plan aims for an executive takeover by systematically firing tens of thousands of professional civil servants and replacing them with politically aligned staff. The source material, it emphasizes using the OMB director as the key of commander intent, a really centralized mechanism for controlling policy implementation and resources across the entire bureaucracy. This ensures compliance. So to neutralize that compliance, the counter-project must immediately employ weaponized simple sabotage to induce constant, tangible administrative drag.
Right. But doesn't that just create friction within a system that is already fundamentally designed to fail the citizens it serves? Aren't you just applying Band-Aids to a broken machine?
It exploits the bureaucracy's inherent low-variety rigidity. For federal and state civil servants who oppose this agenda, this means nonviolent, anonymous, passive resistance. Specific methods include things like apply law regulations to the last letter, or simply misunderstand orders and ask endless, perfectly legitimate clarifying questions. This administrative drag is an essential practical mechanism for slowing down radical policy goals, such as, say, the proposed full privatization of agencies like NOAA. We have to neutralize their operational capacity now to buy us time.
That's a compelling argument regarding operational urgency, I'll admit, though I would frame the urgency differently. Obstruction may buy time, sure, but time is meaningless if the population remains trapped in a state of totalitarian psychosis. That shared delusion you mentioned. Folie à deux. This is where genuinely heinous actions get mistaken for compassion at scale. The very fact that these radical agendas can even be proposed and accepted by a massive segment of the populace, well, it points to a deep cognitive fracture we haven't healed.
Wait, so you're suggesting this shared delusion is actually a prerequisite for the system's success, not just a side effect? And if so, what do we prioritize over simple resistance?
Exactly. That cognitive acceptance is the operating system. So we must prioritize strategic clarity using the cognitive reframing technique known as klishta. This training forces citizens to rigorously separate objective reality, column 1, the verifiable facts, from emotional coloring, column 2, the manufactured outrage, the fear, or that defensive paralysis people fall into. When people are just enraged by a headline, they fall into defensive paralysis or, blind performative protest. Klishta ensures energy is channeled into effective, strategic action that targets the system's actual weak points. This is really the only way to stop movements like this without just becoming enraged protesters.
I'm not totally convinced by that line of reasoning because While cognitive clarity is strategically valuable, sure, it does not halt a deportation flight headed toward what's documented as a hellscape. We are talking about real-world terror happening right now, and the clock is ticking.
I understand the gravity of that threat, believe me, but we must understand what enables the cruelty in the first place.
Okay, but the most critical acts of resistance right now are those that disrupt the cruelty of immediate policy. Take enhanced ICE enforcement. We have verifiable facts like the Nebraska governor signing a 287G agreement, essentially deputizing state troopers after just a brief training period to assist ICE. He explicitly states the goal is to get criminal illegal aliens out of our state. Furthermore, we saw confirmed reporting of the U.S. planning to send migrants on a U.S. military aircraft to Libya, a place Amnesty International has branded a horrific and hellscape detention site, detailing evidence of sexual violence and torture. Direct obstruction, whether it's, federal agents standing in front of an ambulance to block it from leaving an ICE facility, or citizen action providing that necessary physical break, that is essential to mitigate this immediate terror.
That cruelty is undeniable, yes. And the acts of physical defiance are brave, absolutely. But disruption alone is insufficient if the linguistic weapon, labeling people illegal or criminal aliens, persists unchallenged. You're fighting the outcome, we need to fight the cause. The debate must be centered on the constitutional erosion that allows this mindset to thrive.
Okay, how do we center that constitutional debate when the urgency of physical terror is just so...
To highlight the critical, verifiable fact that 46% of ICE detainees do not have a criminal record. This proves that the enforcement is indiscriminate terror, not public safety. That statistic, it's a high-variety data point that breaks the low-variety, monolithic narrative of criminal aliens. This speaks directly to the audience because it exposes the fraudulence of the rhetoric.
That's a powerful statistic, definitely, but I have to ask, if the system has already accepted the linguistic weapon of illegal, is a powerful statistic really enough to break that denial?
It's a starting point for Klishta. The ultimate scaling up of folie à deux, the real danger, is the documented, verifiable refusal of officials to affirm that due process is guaranteed to every individual in the country, regardless of citizenship status. That has to be fiercely debated as the litmus test for tyranny. If you cannot affirm due process for all, you have embraced the core mechanism of totalitarian control. We must break the narrative that they are targeting only criminals by using these facts to force them into a conceptual corner.
Okay, let's shift back maybe to the mechanics of the counter system, specifically targeting the bureaucracy Project 2025 wants to repurpose. Simple sabotage directly targets the inherent rigidity of the administrative state. The project, as we said, requires the OMB to be intimately involved in all policy aspects for compliance. So by applying the low-variety rigidities of bureaucracy, for example, requiring 3 people to clear a simple instruction, or filling out forms illegibly, or just feigning persistent stupidity, the system creates the necessary constant drag to demoralize these top-down political appointees who rely on rapid execution. This is systemic, practical resistance that, importantly, anyone can participate anonymously.
Friction isn't enough, though. The system must be broken by novelty. The source material is quite clear that this administrative state suffers from low-variety facilities and time lags. Introducing friction only makes the system sputter, and often that confirms the opposition's claim that government is inefficient anyway. Resistance requires individuals who possess what's called the kinetic mind or time-bender temperament. This is associated with high cognitive variety and an inherent resistance to monotony and routine.
So you're saying, neurodiversity becomes a strategic asset in fighting this threat.
Precisely. This high-variety thinking, the capacity to rapidly pivot and synthesize disparate data, it acts as the necessary adaptive lever against systems paralyzed by information overload. It's a kind of superpower for justice against oppressive structures. It cuts through bureaucratic inertia and creates the necessary chaos to force systemic change. It's not about slowing the old system down. It's about introducing a viable, faster, more complex new system, a dynamic, viable system, to borrow Stafford Beer's concept.
But that sounds like a luxury we don't have time for. How many people do we realistically expect to train in Klishta or cultivate this kinetic mind? mindset before the entire civil service has been replaced. Actionable. It's anonymous, and it requires no sophisticated training. It is resistance at scale instantly.
Simple sabotage will eventually be crushed by compliance checks and new centralization mandates. We have to think about durability. We need to create a template for a new governance system, one that actually has liberty as its output. This cybernetic redesign, it involves embracing high-variety thinking to transcend the limitations of the old system. Training the kinetic mind is the investment in that durable future. We must break the cycle where one side wins and then the other simply tries to recreate the exact same flawed, centralized system over again.
Okay, but if we accept the need for this higher variety thinking, we still have to acknowledge that the public needs concrete participatory channels beyond just analysis. The energy gathered through acts of sabotage and physical obstruction, the experience of defiance and administrative warfare, that becomes the critical input for the fierce debate you talk about.
I agree that we need energy, absolutely. But that energy must be properly channeled.
This is where practical, systemic resistance truly speaks to the audience, as you put it. They need to feel the resistance to internalize the stakes. This resonates with McKenna's call for a return to the primacy of feeling over pure facts, ensuring the anti-project isn't just an ideology, but an experience that challenges ingrained perceptions.
I see that as a crucial feedback loop, definitely. However, the system maintains control through engineered realities and what you could call linguistic fog by tapping into hidden unconscious desires. This is exactly what Bernays taught us about engineered realities. They tap into our hidden unconscious fears to manufacture consent for the cruelest policies.